And welcome to the State of the Union. This week, unsurprisingly, we're looking at the state of another union on the other side of the Atlantic. After months of campaigning, Americans have voted. In the end, it has proven to be a tighter race than many had expected. America is a country divided. But Joe Biden is on the cusp of becoming the 46th US president. So what does it mean for us here in Europe? Well, after this extraordinary week, let's get the view from an American angle. We've got Ian Lesser, who is a vice president at the German Marshall Fund, who joined us. Ian, thank you very much indeed. Has been somewhat of an extraordinary week, a very close election, not necessarily what some people were expecting. What have you made of this, as I say, most extraordinary of all US elections?
Well, it has been an extraordinary week. And, we've had some extraordinary ones, of course. I mean, in 2000, we had something that was very, very close and dragged on a long time. But this has been extraordinary just because of the polarization in the country, the extraordinary style of the president and his efforts to sort of hang on and to, in some ways, delegitimize the election results, whatever it is.
In saying that, what we did learn this week is that many people thought it would be a repudiation of Trumpism. And actually, it's not being. Donald Trump has increased his votes. We know that he may well end up being get the second largest number of votes of any US presidential candidate in history. This has not been a repudiation of Trump at all, has it?
Well, there's been an extraordinary turnout, for one thing. I mean, the turnout has approached 70%, which by American standards is enormous. I mean, in Europe, this would be normal, but by American standards, this is enormous. So, but no matter how this comes out, roughly half of the country voted for Trump. And so that phenomenon is going to be there. That polarization is going to be there, and that's going to be with us in the system for some time to come.
Just to add to that, though, as you say, when you look at what we've seen from Donald Trump this week with his tweets and his speeches, many feel that American democracy itself is under threats or certainly being challenged. Is that how you feel?
I do think it's correct to say that it's been challenged, but I also think it's correct to say that it's survived it pretty well. I mean, when you get this kind of a turnout, which is extraordinary by American standards, and so far no serious disturbances around the election, lots of political debate, obviously, lots of extraordinary things from the president, the system is held up pretty well. So in the end, we may conclude that, many of these fears were in a sense unfounded, even if the stresses in the system are going to be there for a long time to come.
And let's just look at the foreign policy implications. Many looking on this week will think, you know what, as you say, America's polarized, it's divided, it's contested. American foreign policy, how much can we rely on them?
As far as Europe and others are concerned, when they look at the United States, I think this could actually make a very big difference. I think that polarization will be something to take into account because there's a relationship between societies here. But at the level of foreign policy, I think we could be in for some very, very big differences and probably ones that most American allies would find appealing.
Okay, Ian Lesser, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Euronews.
Thanks very much. A pleasure. Good to be with you.
Well, let's get the view now from Europe, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Withjana Poglerian, who is a Senior Policy Fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's been a very long and contested week in the United States, lots of vote counting, lots of back and forth. How do you think the EU leaders have watched on at this process? Slightly aghast, slightly tense, I assume.
Yes, I think slightly tense. I think in Europe, expectation was that we would see a clear Biden victory, which hasn't been the case. I think some sort of bewilderment also about, the American president kind of self-declaring or self-crowning him as the new president of the United States.
Many would say, though, that the United States still remains, a divided place, and that Europe needs to stand on its own 2 feet. It cannot just rely and cannot guarantee the United States as a partner in the future.
We have a very vivid debate about this right now in Germany. We had an op-ed from our defense minister, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, in Politico right before the election, actually. I think also hoping for a Biden victory, saying Europe needs the United States. We cannot do without it. Let's abandon this talk about strategic autonomy and let's kind of build the future together.
But isn't that part of the problem in a sense? Because as you rightly pointed out, there is divisions in Europe. You know, you look at probably most Western European leaders, I think it's fair to say, were probably supporting Joe Biden as president. Some countries in Central and Eastern Europe, maybe in Poland, Hungary, Slovenia and elsewhere, supporting Donald Trump. And that means that essentially European foreign policy as a united force becomes more difficult because there is such divisions on lots of issues internally.
Yes, that is absolutely right. And when it comes to transatlantic relations, the rift goes right through, not only through the European Union member states. I mean, it's generally, I think, correct to talk about a divide between Eastern and Western Europe, but also, as I said, in Germany, kind of within the country, different party camps are not sure how to interpret this and what to do about this. But in general, I think in Central and Eastern Europe, there is a huge fear that without the United States, there would be no kind of security guarantee vis-a-vis Russia. They are afraid of kind of the nuclear blackmailing. And I can very well understand why they want to stick kind of with the United States, whatever it takes.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That is all for this week. Don't forget you can follow the latest on those US elections online and here on TV on Euronews and euronews.com. Thanks for watching and goodbye.